You can't go out talking about negative and positive feedback loops and complex adaptive systems and think people are going to think this, you're just BSing them. We're asking you to give us a job and you come talk about systems, right? So you have to both do something with systems inform what you do, but you also have to create a narrative that allow people to sort of see. And the police is a good example because one of the things, again, I had another conversation about this morning. The goal is really to have a safe policing, responsive, and reflective of the community. Is that abolishing the police? Is that defunding the police? Maybe, maybe not. So people state a goal and argue about the goal. But really, if you look under the hood, they really want something different. And there's a lot of agreement about every community should have safe, responsive policing that's reflective of the community. But if you go to the way to get there, defund the police, you're going to get disagreement. And you should, because we actually don't know. Um, but I think issues get framed in such a way that there's no movement. And I'll just give you one last example. I worked with Detroit during the bankruptcy, and I actually called for them to redoing their TIFs so that there was a call saying stop giving the business these tax increment financing. If you go to Detroit, you see all this building going on downtown to people who have billionaires. They don't really need it, but they get it. And the city's not going to stop because the city wants them. But the people in the community felt like it's going to white people. It's not going to any person in the community. To me, an obvious thing would have been to link them, to link a tax increment finance zone in this downtown Detroit with something in the neighborhood. And it's different in different state laws, but most of the time you can do that. That would have been such a win-win situation. Instead, it was a binary: either the rich white folks downtown win, or the neighborhood wins. And I think part of a mayor's job is to actually create those bridges, to create that dialogue, so you understand the system and you understand you need some of those rich businesses in downtown Detroit, but you also need to bring the community along. But this you don't get framed like that. You have to frame it like that. That's part of your job as a mayor and understanding how these systems work.
And just going back to your other question as well, how do you argue for systemic change from those who've benefited from the system? And I'll say this as the spokesperson for white people. White people don't like wasting money. If you create an open and fair field for competition, you will get more people that are involved in the process of bidding for government work, a better product at a lower price. And we've created a system, and I'd like to share it with both other cities and anybody else. It's an open platform. It's called Beacon. And all you have to do is Google Beacon Pittsburgh. And I gave an order very early in my administration. I said, government contracting is Byzantine, and it is created to favor the very few. Just as Dr. Blaine had stated about sheltered markets, when we offer a contract for our housing authority to be able to provide drywall hanging for 400 units, we know there will be one or two companies that will bid on the work. If we break it into 40 contracts for 10, we'll have 50 companies bidding on the work. And those companies will eventually start hiring people, and we'll get more and more people bidding on work. But we have to be able to create it in bite size. The first contract we did was for cleaning our senior centers, and our seniors were livid. The bathrooms were not clean, the kitchens were not clean, and we had one company for over a decade bid on the work. We had 13 companies bid on the contract. We saved money because of the competition, and it went to a minority women-owned firm who still has that contract because they do great work. People shouldn't be afraid of competition.
I'm so pleased that the mayors here are focused on entrepreneurship, because in our research, it's the number one way that builds wealth in communities, particularly communities of color. And we are working right now with 40 African-American-led CDFIs across the country to bring that CDFI capital to cities across the country. I think the second thing is that understanding the ecosystems of how capital happens, how technical assistance happens, and how access to markets, because it also has to be a public-private solution. It can't just be a public solution. You also have to bring the private sector to the table, and understanding that ecosystem of supports across the business life cycle, because a lot of resources get focused on the startup and that end of the market, not enough on what I call the missing middle. So you can't grow firms big enough to have sustainability in these communities.
We're really fortunate in Tacoma that we have one of 40 MBDA centers in the United States. And that's a minority business development agency that really is working on startup, but more importantly, is working with that middle group, right? How do we are one of 40 in the country. We were the first MBDA in the country to really, and it's so funny, guys, I felt like, was Gary looking at my notes? But we implemented it using our public-private partnership model. And we are seeing great success with that. But the important thing that we've done is a lot of the dollars that we're able to leverage through the MBDA is for that middle. It's like, it's not just how do you start it, but we're focusing on how do you grow? How do you sustain?
Well, I just wanted to make one last point, which was that, and I love what Mayor Peduto was saying, and it really kind of centers around a growth mindset. And how do we create a growth mindset in our cities? And this idea of an environment of abundance versus scarcity. One of the things that we struggle with, for example, in the Deep South is the legacy of segregation. And that was a legacy that was really focused on scarcity, and that it was a very much I win, you lose kind of discussion. And so building on that growth mindset is a really big thing here in Jackson. And we feel like if we can really build that model, then that's something that can truly be replicated.